What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and tonight I am joined by a cool person and someone who I've really come to respect and someone I want to know more about, and that is the founder of Wiser Precision, a small little outdoor company from the state of Washington up near the Canadian border. And I have Shane Wise of Wiser Precision on to talk all about his story, his journey, and what's led him to create such amazing outdoor products. Shane, what's happening, my man? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that was great to hear. What's man, brother, you've had a busy winter. You've been all over the place doing some outdoor shows, selling some products, all that.
Yes, yeah, we just finished up show season, which is pretty crazy. So we've got a little bit of room to breathe now. It feels like it's just kind of like it's such a crazy whirlwind. Like we do all of our manufacturing in-house as well. So if I'm out, then products aren't being made and assembled. So it's this weird like balance of like trying to build up inventory for these shows to take to these shows and then still have product to ship while I'm away and then coming back and repeating that rush to get ready for the next show. So now we're through show season. It's like, okay, and I can breathe a little bit, work on the house some.
There you go. I love it. What shows did you end up going to?
Yeah, so we did the Pacific Northwest Sportsman's Show in Portland, Oregon, and then we did the Bighorn Show in Spokane, Washington.
Awesome. How'd those go for you? Was that your first time doing a show?
Second time. So the first time was the Portland show last year, which was the first year that they had done it since COVID, and it was quite the stark difference from what it was this year. Like it was just so much bigger this year, and that was pretty cool. Like actually meeting some of these other big names in the industry and these bigger companies and getting to chat with them and sort of interface. That was super cool. And then Spokane was pretty interesting too. That's like obviously a much smaller show. but I would say the people that attend are like more focused, like they're hunters from the Spokane area. Where Portland, like you get like all sorts of people that are just like, they got a weekend to kill, so they're gonna go to the sports show that's going on.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I've actually never been to either of them, but I for a long time I was like, oh, I'm gonna go down to the Sportsman Show in Portland, but then I went to the Puyallup one, and I hate to say it, I was extremely disappointed, and I was like, "Ugh, uh, it's the same show in Portland, maybe a little bigger. I don't know. More people show up, different vendors. I was a little disappointed by the Puyallup one.
Yeah, I've never even attended the Puyallup one personally, and I do know that there's definitely a different. I mean, I think you get a lot of the same crowd that guys are just bouncing around to shows, but I do know that some companies are a little bit more selective about which shows that they go to. Will go to Portland and not to Spokane, or sorry, not to Puyallup.
Yeah. Well, give the listeners who are you and where did Wiser Precision come from and what is it that sparked you in the outdoor world to create something to fill a void that you realize, I'd imagine, while you were hunting?
Yeah, so you guys already know this is Shane Wise Precision. So it's kind of an interesting start. I've always kind of been one to tinker and build things, and this was, gosh, I mean, it was a while ago. It was probably 2016. I started helping a, at the time he wasn't a friend, but then became a friend. He had this nonprofit that he was building, and I really believed in what they were doing, really liked what they were doing. So I was helping out with their web design for a little while, and then I was just like trying to figure out how to help them more, and financially was like a way to help them. So they did a lot of work like third world countries. So a lot of the money would go to drill wells and build medical facilities and teach people how to have a trade and sustainable jobs. So I knew that like there was probably something that I could do to help them financially, and it was I had a couple of product ideas, and eventually like landed on my first product, the Chrono Mount. So that product isolates magnetospeed bayonet. If anybody's familiar with the magnetospeed chronographs, they mount to your barrel, but that affects your barrel harmonics. So you get a point of impact shift when you're collecting muzzle velocity data. So this was a problem that I had. Like, okay, this is annoying for me. I want to fix this problem myself. Did it. A couple of buddies saw it, were really impressed with it, and they're like, "You could probably sell that." I was like, "Gosh, I probably could." And I was like, "Okay, maybe I start this company, and then a good chunk of these proceeds can help my buddy and his nonprofit." So that was like really like sort of the goal and the ambition of starting the company. It was like I should say the goal and the ambition. Like this was totally just something on the side. Like, hey, if I can like build a company that can generate some revenue for this cause, that would be super cool. It had zero intentions of it, becoming what it is, and eventually taking over my day job. Um,
And
but
what were you doing at the time?
so the last 9 years, I was a control systems designer. So I worked on oil refineries. So a lot of the designing the instrumentation systems that monitor and control the process.
Yeah. Did you always have design background experience? Like, were you a blueprint guy and always just like in the back room, just drawing up prints on how to design things? Or like, what really struck it for you?
I loved playing with Legos as a kid, honestly. Like that's seriously it. Like I just like building cool things. So I remember, like being in high school, I was way into CAD,
Yeah.
and then got access to a CAD program, and then started designing this big bore V6 engine, and then a car around this engine, and ultimately that kind of became my portfolio, my resume, if you will, and eventually landed me a job in the oil refineries, and then did well just doing like what I originally got hired for. Is there was a crude fire event at one of our local refineries, and then they needed extra hands on deck to as they called as built the drawings. So basically, the refinery burned down, or at least a unit within the refinery did. So all hands on deck, really fast, get it up and running, but then you have to document exactly how things were built. So this company was like, "Hey, we've got like 3 months worth of work that we can use you for," and it's literally just like somebody draws lines on paper and then you have to update it digitally. Um, So I was like, well, this is too good of an opportunity to say no to. So I left the job that I was doing and went over there, and that 6 month, or sorry, that 3 month guarantee turned into 6 months of work at this company that really enjoyed working for them.
Wow. I'm always really amazed at how people just take these leaps of faith. Like, I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
I'm going for it. Did you have like a CNC machine, or what were you using to create your um what is it called? The first
You did the Chrono Mount?
yeah, the first types versions of your product. Like, you just like getting
Yeah.
wood and shaving it down and shaping it, or like what are you doing?
No, I was marginally more advanced at that point. So CNC machining has been another, like, mills are really cool, but then the whole, like, what you can do with a CNC machine fascinated me as well. So I think it was after high school. I think it was in my late teens. I ended up building just like a little DIY CNC router, so I could like barely cut aluminum with it. But that's sort of what I cut my teeth on, like programming CNC machines, was that one little DIY machine that I just cobbled together. And then largely, like, for prototyping stuff, 3D printers are awesome. If it doesn't need to be functional, like just getting a feel for something and seeing the scale in your hand, like, 3D printers are so slick. And that's actually the first, gosh, it was several years I was selling the Chrono Mount. It was partially 3D printed components and what I could buy off the shelf, to be honest.
That is so wild. So you built the Chrono Mount. That's huge.
Mhm.
That I mean, I've you only have so much ammo, right, that you want to send down range to chronograph on your gun, but then also to sight it in and make sure you're dialed in. And so the last thing you want to do
Mhm.
is like have to use another box just to go through that process. So
Yep.
so here you are. You found a solution. You created this chronograph. What do you call that? Chronograph bar, or it's mount system?
Yeah, yeah. An off-barrel magnetospeed mount is kind of a generic term to call it.
Yeah.
Specifically called the Chrono Mount.
So then here you are. You have some success, and then what? Then you're like, I'm out hunting, and all of a sudden, like, "Ah, I'm sick and tired of carrying this extra gear, or I wish I had this, or what was the inspiration for the next couple products that you've created?
Yeah, it was a largely, I wish I had this. I was on a bear hunt. Gosh, this is like, it's kind of a funny story, and it's a real quick story to tell. Like, how I got into big game hunting. I didn't grow up big game hunting at all. I waterfowl hunted through high school and then in my early 20s. Um, and then I got married. So this was 2016. So it wasn't even that long ago. Um, my wife and I just got married that year. It's that summer we moved into an apartment together, and I was browsing Craigslist free section, like just looking for whatever free stuff there was, and a bear rug popped up. I'm like, oh, babe, there's a bear rug. We can have a bear rug in our place. And she's like, no way. She's like, the only way we're getting a bear rug is if you go out and kill that thing. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I know how to shoot. I could probably make this happen. So I went out and, like, I mean, it took me a couple of years, and I didn't hunt hard. I learned to hunt hard after, that first success. But it took me 3 years of going out 2 weekends a year. And I was lucky enough to at least see a bear every year and kind of, keep the excitement going. And it was on the third year I connected. So I think it would have been 2018. So it was, yeah, 2016, 2017 I hunted, and then 2018 finally connected on a bear. And it was on that hunt that I came up with the quick sticks. I saw this bear like 1,400 yards away, and already my heart's pounding like, there's a bear here. This can happen. So I'm like so stoked, and end up like dropping a whole bunch of elevation, like kind of where I was. I just got, climbed this ridge, and then there's this big valley between us, essentially, and it's at the end of the drainage, so sort of a bowl separating us in this valley. And I book it across to where I'd last seen him, which is like three-quarters of a mile away, and then, dropped a whole bunch of elevation down, climbed a whole bunch of elevation, and then I end up picking the bear up again and move downwind of him, and I'm getting into a shooting position, or trying to get into a shooting position, and I see him, 200 yards away, and I had in my head, like, I have my Atlas bipod on my rifle. I'm like, I have to get prone for this shot. And it's 200 yards, so I'm not going to take an offhand shot that far away. And I just had in my head, like, prone's what I got to be. So it felt like I was searching for like 10 minutes for a shooting position. And like hindsight, just knowing how these situations go, it was probably like 30 seconds or a minute, but it felt like forever. I'm like, gosh, how on earth am I going to set up? Where can I set up? And like scramble up and down the hill and eventually find a spot and get set up and I shoot the bear. Um, but I was thinking like I used to do a fair bit of backpacking, so I was already sold on trekking poles and I already had those with me. And I was like, gosh, these are like basically already a pair of shooting sticks. Like these have to be a pair of shooting sticks. Like if I had these, then I wouldn't have been hunting for a spot. Like I would have just set up right where I first saw them. So got back from that trip and started looking like for trekking pole shooting stick adapters, and of course you get the couple of results of like, oh, just loop your straps, and that's all that I was finding. Like, gosh, that just doesn't, like, that's not going to work for me. Like I want something better. I want something that's more sturdy and faster. So I think it was like that first week that I was back from the hunt, I had something designed and printed already, um, and then showed a few buddies that product. And I said product. At that time, it wasn't a product. It was just this thing that I had, and they were really excited about it. Like, no, this is cool. Like, okay, well, maybe this is the next product. Then maybe I'll do hunting products. Um, and then, yeah, spent the next probably, yeah, so I guess it would have been a little over 6 months, almost a year of like fine tuning and perfecting that, if you will, like sending out updated versions to folks to try out and getting feedback. And yeah,
I love it. So how many different models have you changed since your original shooting sticks?
oh man. Well, so yeah, so since that first prototype, I'm trying to think. So from that first prototype, there's like the very important features that I can remember off the top of my head. I don't even know how many versions. Like it gets so tricky because like one version can just be like a few thousandths tighter tension than the last version. But like major changes, the first major change was the first model had like a set angle that it hard stopped to, and instantly found out that people had different preferences. Like, oh, I want to stop here, I want to stop there. It's like, okay, well, let's make this universal. So then came up with the little like set screw type system that you can adjust where it locks to. So
Yep.
that's a big one. The other thing, it was like pretty much from day one, I knew I wanted a bipod out of the trekking poles connected to my rifle, but I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't even try tackling that problem with the first prototype. So that's probably the second like biggest change that came, was making incorporating that ring on the outside so you can later have the clip and then connect it to your rifle. Yeah, those are probably the two biggest, and I think from there just like playing around with several different materials and landing on a material that worked really well.
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing you share your story about all this and applying it to my experiences because being a backpacker, which and if you are bringing a product that doesn't have at least two functions, it's like a waste
Mhm.
of space and a waste of weight that you're carrying. Because if it can't serve two purposes, then if you're not using it for what it's meant for, then you're just lugging it around. And I feel like trekking poles are
Mhm.
one of those things that I love. I never hike in with them. They'll usually be in my bag,
Okay.
and I'll usually only use them after an animal's down and for the pack out because I like to carry the rifle in hand when I'm hiking in because I never know what I'm going to jump shoot or,
Yep.
come
Sure.
across. And so then I carry a tripod for my spotter and a tripod
Mhm.
for filming off of and all these different things. And then I'm carrying extra weight of trekking poles that I'm not using very often. You essentially what you created is a one thing to rule it all. And
Mhm.
and as long as you have a pair of trekking poles that you really like, then you might as well go with the quick sticks and get yourself a quick clip and put it on your gun, and you got yourself a tripod not only for shooting off of, but also for glassing from, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
Is
Yep, exactly. Yeah, just all being a big weight weenie, really, just a big sissy trying to save weight.
I freaking love it. So here you are, you come out with this, your quick sticks. Has this been like your biggest seller? Like your and I don't even have them in hand. Are these aluminum or plastic?
Nope, they're plastic.
Yeah.
Yep, so they're an engineering grade plastic. So they're, yeah, very very impressive mechanical properties. Um, But yeah, yeah, a lightweight plastic.
How much weight can you put on those things? Like, can you really load into it when you're shooting from them?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we actually had at least one guy left a review. He ran over them with his truck, and then they were totally fine.
Don't
Yeah,
recommend it,
they're
but
pretty durable. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So here you are, you're coming out with all these, and then just most recently, and one of the things that I mean, the quick sticks definitely caught my eye. But like you, I also like shooting prone. And so the idea from
Mhm.
shooting from sticks, I'm like, would I rather lay down and find something to lay down off of? It's hard to say,
Mhm.
but and I just talked about this on the last podcast I released with Dennis Stokes of Initial Ascent Backpacks. We talked about gear, and you have an ultralight panhead that, like, when I
Yes.
saw it, I was like, "Holy smokes, this is exactly what I've been looking for." And I truly believe that there's nothing else like it on the market. Outdoorsman tries to make a very small, lightweight
Mhm.
panhead, but I don't think anyone efficiently does it until your creation, the Nighthawk Ultralight.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, there's that, and that's like largely why I ended up making it too. Is there like I was running a ball head because I'm like I'm a weight weenie, so I've got the spreadsheets and I'm looking for the lightest piece of gear that I can get that still functions well. And there wasn't a pan head out on the market that met that criteria for
Mhm.
me, so I had been using a ball head. But that's kind of annoying. Like it totally works and it gets the job done. Where I find it really annoying, or I think a lot of guys find it kind of annoying, is when you're gritting it out a hillside. It's so easy with a ball head to, instead of going perfectly left right, you're most likely going to skew up or down a little ways when you're going left right. So at least I found that I was overlapping quite a lot when I was gritting out a hillside just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I was like, gosh, this can be a little bit more efficient. Um, so yeah, I had the idea to make a very lightweight and very smooth pan head. Um, that's another thing. Like there's a few pan heads out there that are kind of light, but they're, one, they're not as light, but two, they're not nearly as smooth too. I mean, most people are probably familiar with slipstick. You got something like on the edge of your field of view and you go to drag it center and you end up like way overshooting.
Yes.
Like just drove me nuts. It's like, okay, well, there's two problems to fix here. Like, let's make something smooth and let's make something really light.
Mhm. Yeah, so what my first go about when it came to heads for tripods and stuff like that was I ended up buying a discontinued. Well, no, let's start at the very beginning. I thought a tripod was a tripod was a tripod, so I bought like some $30 plastic head that you crank too tight and it cracks all the plastic, and then your head's worthless and it's all one piece of gear. And I was like, what the heck is this? I'm never using tripods ever again. And then you start looking at tripods. It's like, well, if you get into this, then you have different options. And so I ended up buying a discontinued carbon fiber. It was called the Carbon Summit by Vortex, and it was a wonderful carbon fiber tripod, and it had a fluid head on it. And I was like, "Oh, this is sweet." And so I'd use it. Took it down to my first year going to the Hunt Expo in 2020, and I go to the Vortex booth, and I'm like, "Yeah, I've been using this tripod, love it, blah blah blah." And they're like, "Man, yeah, we discontinued those. A lot of people were having issues with the pan head because it was self-serviceable. However, if you ended up dinking with it too much, you'd ruin it, and you'd have a head that was
Mm.
worthless." Well, here I am with a tripod head that works, tripod that's great, and this last year I ended up coming across the new updated version of the Carbon Summit tripod that Vortex released, and I love it. It's smaller, it's lightweight, strong, and the head sucks. I mean, exactly what you're talking about, where you're panning for something and you're like, oh, I just want to move a little bit further to the right, and it's just herky jerky. It's like, you can't smoothly look at anything. And so I was like, okay, well, I put a ball head on that tripod, which is great, except for how heavy the ball head is. I'm like, it defeats the purpose of a lightweight tripod and all that. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, what is on the market? And I started to look out there and I was like, okay, this pan head is exactly what I want, I need, but the price. And this is where you get to talk about this. I was like, dang, that's about the price of my tripod. You priced your panhead at just under $300.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm gonna say it's worth every penny. The issue is like, how do you justify your prices when it comes to this? Obviously, you're a small, self-made industry. You got to get your feet on the
Mhm.
ground and all that, but you also don't want to devalue your work that you've created.
Yep.
So sell listeners what sets us apart, because obviously no one else is making quick sticks. No one else made uh, the chronograph mount like you have. So those are brand new things, but
Mhm.
anyone can go out and get a tripod head. So what is the difference between your pan head and all the others?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like we've already talked about it, getting that combination of weight and smoothness, and like you already said, like there's nothing out there. And going through the prototyping phases for that, kind of learned why there might not be anything out there. It was really, really tough. Yeah,
What
there's like, one, I guess, a huge amount of R&D time that has to be, reconciled for eventually. Um, to get it where it is, it uses very premium materials and expensive. It's all made in the USA. Every piece of it is. So there's inherent cost just making it in America, which I'm into, and like that's just the way it's gonna be.
we're into on this podcast, we're all about that freedom loving American patriot life. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So you ended up doing a lot of R&D. What were some of the things that you changed right away?
Yeah, so there was right away changes was largely to kind of the fit of it, the fit and feel and aesthetics of it. And then getting the actual function, like largely getting it as smooth as it is and getting it to function as smooth as it is, in very hot weather and extremely cold weather. That's what took a lot of testing,
Mm.
and a lot of playing with various different things to try to figure out what was going on and how to overcome it.
Yeah, because you don't want things to freeze and cinch up. And then what happens in
Yep.
the heat?
Yeah, exactly. So you don't want your head to loosen up in the heat either. So we found a pretty sweet combination of features that make it still very smooth and not lock up, when it's sub freezing. We've tested down to -14 Fahrenheit. And then we had a pretty crazy, gosh, weather this year has been nuts. We had a day this summer where it got to like 114 degrees. Like we're all the way up on the Canadian border. Like that's not normal. That's not normal at all. So, anyways, given that opportunity, I was like, well, let's put one of these prototypes out in the sun and see what it does. Um, and then, largely most of the testing was done around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But yeah, finding a good combination where it's not going to get too loose or grease isn't going to leak out when it's really hot and it's not going to lock up in the winter. That was a difficult combination to find.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why I guarantee one of the number one questions that I'm going to get, or you're probably getting about this, is how does it handle heavier, larger um, spotting scopes, like the 85 millimeters, those big boys.
Yep, yeah, we get that question all the time, and that's such like personally, I'm reserved in answering it because I know that people have wildly different expectations. For me personally, the biggest optic that I have is a Koa 77 millimeter spotter, and I am like more than content using that thing. If for me personally, I can get the tension set just right on that thing. Where even at the full 60 mag range on that eyepiece, I can drag it around, and I'm not getting so much slipstick that I'm losing anything in my field of view.
Mm.
So for me, that's like 60 power. That's a pretty extreme use case. Generally, if something's moving, you're probably going to back off to 40 or 20 and then move in on it and then zoom up. So for me personally, like I don't have any reservations or hesitations. The guys that are optics snobs might have like, and that's probably the right way to put it. But yeah, some people just have, you know, I guess stronger preferences. So
Totally.
that's where I'm so reserved in answering this. Um, yeah, I mean, there's some guys out there that are like, oh, if I'm going to use my 90 millimeter, then I'll just take, a heavier, like a Suri VA5 or something like that.
Right.
Um, I will say we have had a couple of guys that have used this head with Swaro 90s or the 95 BTX even, and said that they were very impressed. But then you get some guys too that are like, yeah, if I'm going to use anything bigger than an 80 millimeter, I'm probably going to take the BA5. So I think it just largely depends on how picky you are.
Yeah.
Like I said, for me personally, I think it's fantastic.
Man, I love it. I love it. Okay, so Shane, you said if you wanted a bear rug, you had to go out and kill it yourself. So,
Yeah, my
so
wife
was
told me that.
that the very first big game animal that you shot?
It was. Yep.
Dude, that's
Yeah, and that
something
was.
you and I have in common, brother, is bear hunting
Yeah.
started it all.
Oh, bears are so cool. I love bears.
They're awesome. So, did you end up rugging it out?
I did. Yeah. Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's actually. I mean, I know your listeners aren't on video, but our whole house is torn apart. I think I told you, like we got flooded out. You can't really see him because he's all folded up, but he's in the shop here with me.
Nice. That is so awesome. That's beautiful. So, that was in you said 2018?
Yep.
So, here you are, very first time big game hunting. Well, you said it took you about 3 years, but
Yep. Three
very
seasons.
first time with a big game animal down in 2018. That's not that long ago. And here you are creating
Really not.
products for yourself and for the hunting industry. So, has what has hunting done for you? Has it like is it your connection with God, the universe, creator? Is it your escape? I mean, what is it that makes you and the gears start turning and running more and more?
Yeah, I think like summing it up in one word is probably adventure. Like I think that's sort of what I found pretty fascinating about backpacking for a little while is that you can get out in these amazing places and you talk about connecting it with God, like seeing his creation like in the backcountry is just wild and phenomenal and special. Um, but then just after I think after a couple of years of backpacking, that specialness sort of started to fade because it's like, oh, here I am on this trail with these like, 30 other people that I've passed. Um,
Yep.
where hunting was just like, I guess bringing another hobby and another passion into the equation, but then also taking like, then you're like all of a sudden you're taking backpacking to like mountaineering, but then it's mountaineering plus chasing some animal.
Yeah.
So that like jump was such a neat and kind of wild combination of passions of mine and just cranked the adventure aspect up to 10.
Yes. Well, what we talk about on this podcast is that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. So let's talk about
Mhm.
that adventure. It feeds and fuels the soul because I believe mankind is constantly looking for some sort of adventure for their own life. And how we
Mhm.
measure adventure looks differently to each individual. But I know that for me, it's that unknown. I get me into that
Yeah.
unknown, and all of a sudden, you start to rely upon your own grit, your own determination. You challenge your own core values. You challenge your courage, right? The first known
Mhm.
quality of a man is
Totally.
like, dude, I don't know, I'm a little scared right now, or I'm uncomfortable, or I'm in this place where what's gonna happen? Am I doing it right? Did I scout enough? Are there actually animals here? Like what's going on? And at least that's how my mind works, and just constantly
Mhm.
battling the self-doubt. And it's like, no, no, no. I'm doing it right. I'm doing it. Therefore, I'm doing it right because better to try or better to do than to not do at all. So
Yep. Completely 100% resonate with that. Like, whatever it is, whether it's hunting or business or asking the girl out to the prom, whatever it is, like, just do the thing. Like, don't think about like, think about the thing enough to do it well. But at the end of the day, you got to go do the thing.
yeah. So what is that? At what point did you decide to turn wiser precision into wiser precision? Like, what was that precipice where you're like, I just can't do this as a hobby, or people want my products enough, or you know what? I think I got something here. I'm gonna take the leap of faith.
Yeah, it was honestly, I wouldn't say it was a leap of faith thing at all. and I wish that it would have been, but it was really probably the end of I guess it would have been the end of 2020. Like 2020 was a really good year for the business, and that was kind of when it's like, okay, I think there's really something here. Like, let's try to put a little more effort into this. Um, so yeah, like I said, I wish that it was this leap of faith thing where it's just like, oh, I know that like what I'm doing is so cool, and people are just gonna enjoy it and like it, and they're gonna think it's cool too. But yeah, I just didn't have that. I don't know if it's the confidence or just understanding or realization or whatever. Like, I didn't realize that until like started seeing the numbers come in. I guess I was
Yeah.
like, oh, people do think this is kind of interesting. Like, oh, that's cool. I mean, I think it's interesting, of course, but it's cool to know that other people think so as well.
Dude, I can only equate it to my own personal experiences, and that is podcasting. You start a
Mhm,
podcast, you have no idea if anyone's going to listen. You're like, I'm
yeah,
just going to record my words and I'm going to put it out there, and who knows what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, it's like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I
mhm,
and I think it's something that humanity's missing. We I believe that we're made in the image of God, and God's a creator, and therefore, if we're made in His image, we're made to create. And creating can look differently in a lot of different facets and avenues of life. However, as long as you are creating, you're living the life that you're supposed to be living because you're you're being right. The I am statements.
mhm,
And too often or and not, especially being a public educator, I see this in the lives of my students. Like, they have no concept or grasp of what they're capable of because they're
mhm.
so constantly surrounded by a bubble of comfort, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, I can't really expand out of this box, or I could, but it's just so nice and comfy. Why get out of bed at 5 a.m.? Why get out of bed at 4:30? I can, you know, hey, it's kids, it's spring break. What do you got going on this week? Oh, I'm gonna sleep a lot. It's like, okay, I get that. I get that. There's a time and a place. Um, but I feel like the motivation, the inspiration for life is waiting for people, and humanity's missing the boat on that. What do you think?
Mhm.
Do you agree?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, that's like it sort of goes to the saying that weak men create bad times, and bad times create hard men and or strong men, and then they create good times. Sort of comes to that. Like it just feels like we have been living in good times, and yes, I would say that like it's such a comfortable world that we live in. Like, man, we've got hot showers, and we've got alarm clocks, we've got TVs and video games, and if you want a job, like pretty much anybody can go out and get a job. Like it's just such a wildly prosperous time that we live in, and wildly comfortable time that we live in as well. Kind of like you've mentioned. Um, but I completely agree. Like, gosh, if I don't have to do something uncomfortable, why would I? Like
Yeah.
it is difficult to do that unless you know find something so curious that you have to push past that discomfort.
Yeah. That's interesting. Curiosity, right? It gets people motivated. Find your curiosity. I like that. I like that. Shane, I'm gonna have to use that on in some future. So I heard I forget what I was listening to. Probably it might have been like a Joe Rogan podcast back in the day.
Hmm.
He had some random like philosopher on that was talking about how we're actually the happiest when we're creating. When we
Hmm.
are creating anything is when we find the most fulfillment and joy in our lives, and then it resonates to everything else. So, when you found a need for a product from your hunting experience, and now that you've started down this path of creating, has your life been more fulfilled in combination with you being out in the field hunting and doing different things? Has it made you a better husband, a better father, a better like whatever?
Yeah, I would say the last year it's just felt like wild and crazy, and maybe not like I've yeah, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. So like one, yes, like the finding fulfillment in creation, like I resonate with so hard. And I think it's a pretty interesting point to connect that to God the Creator as well. I don't know that I'd ever done that before. Um, in the past, I'd always just thought that I'm just a guy that likes to tinker, and so tinkering is where I find fulfillment. Didn't really make the connection that, well, yes, God's the creator too. Maybe most people find fulfillment in creation as well. But that is like absolutely me at my happiest is just when I'm in the shop, like, playing around with some new thing, like designing a new gizmo and then prototyping that gizmo and then playing with the gizmo and seeing how it works and functions and how I can make it better.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would like to think that it's made me a better father and a better husband. And I think going to hunting specifically, and this sort of relates to business as well, but just the mental toughness that has been developed in me in the last couple of years, largely from hunting, I think has absolutely made me a better husband. At least I would like to think, and absolutely a better father. At least I would like to think.
Yeah.
And that's something like the mental toughness that has been developed on some of my hunts. Like I just think would be so difficult and challenging to build otherwise.
So talk about that a little bit. Expand that for all our listeners. It took you 3 years to kill your first black bear, and you said you went out
Yep.
2 weekends a year every year. So from that point, then what? What has this journey been, and what are some of the things that you've encountered that have allowed your roots to go deeper and your fortitude to grow stronger?
Yeah, so after that first successful hunt, I was obviously on a high, and then looking for the next thing. So we had been, me and my buddy who became hunting partners had been listening to this podcast, and they had talked a lot about elk hunting. So we're both like, well, let's plan an elk hunt. Yeah, yeah, let's plan an elk hunt. So we ended up planning an elk hunt in Idaho, and miraculously, somehow we ended up tagging. I mean, we probably shouldn't have because we had no clue what we were doing. I mean, so much of no clue of what we were doing that we went on a scouting trip in August before the season opened, largely just to get a lay for the land and figure out the roads and access points, water locations, camp spots, that sort of stuff. And we're in the field hiking around, and we're looking at this poop, and we're like, "Is that elk poop? Is that just big mule deer poop? There's cows in the area. Is that just cow poop? I don't know." We're just so green, like so wildly green that yeah, we yeah. Anyways, that story just shows that how naive I was, and then consequently how lucky I was to fill a tag that season. But we ended up going to this spot, and kind of last minute, our plan got changed. They got a whole bunch of snow, which was non-typical for the time of year that we were going in, and we couldn't access any of the locations that we had planned to hunt in. And we had probably, gosh, it was like 5 different spots within this unit that we would go and check out. Um, and we thought that we did a good job, like giving ourselves like all these different, plan A, B, C, D, E, and F. Um, but we all, for every one of those spots, they were either up really high or we had to get high to then access the spot. So we couldn't access any of these spots that we had. So it was like day before opening, we're there driving around, like, gosh, where do we go? Open up the maps again, like try to find some lower spots. Like, well, I guess we try this drainage here. And hiked into that drainage that night, set up camp, woke up the next morning, and that morning we ended up finding a whole bunch of elk, and I ended up dropping a raghorn that morning as well, like within an hour of shooting light. It was just kind of like such a wild high, like, holy cow, we did it! We killed an elk! Like, oh my goodness!
And those are the absolute best experiences, stories, and everything. I'm sure like that night you're sitting around maybe the fire or whatever, and you're just like, I still can't believe this just happened. Just it's so
Yep, totally.
surreal. Man, that
Yep.
is beautiful. And here you are, you were newer in hunting and you're like, I'm gonna go hunt out of state. Just like that. Just like, I don't know, Idaho. Sounds great. Like
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, there's not like a fantastic hunting opportunities in Washington, as you know. Like, we work with what we've got, and it's like not to make it sound awful, but it's not the other Western states.
uh-huh.
So, yeah, we just, I mean, and kind of to that adventure note too. Like, that was more of an adventure to go to some other state and hunt some animal, that I've never hunted before in a location that I've never hunted before. Um, yeah, just adding to that adventure factor, I think was largely part of it as well.
That is so awesome. I love it. So here you are. I've always found myself once I dove into, and I'm going to say the hunting industry more because of the podcasting and the show
Mhm.
and just public speaking that I've gotten into and all this, that I don't, um, I feel like I don't get to absorb hunting as much as I want as like when I first started. Do you feel like this is happening to you with you being a creator of products that are used in the field? Like you're constantly checking your gear and being like, "Oh, I wonder if this is going to work as well, how it's holding up, or I bet I could make a better version of that." Or is your mind always in the game, or do you find yourself drifting to other things?
Um, I would like to think that it's fairly balanced. Like, I mean, even before Wiser Precision existed, like I was always thinking of, how to make something to make whatever it was I was doing easier or better or more efficient. Um, so I don't think that's just always been there. Um, so yeah, I've learned to live with that, I guess. So yeah, when I'm out hunting, of course I have things that come up and it's like, oh yeah, I could do this that way, or somebody should come up with this. But it's not that's the reason I'm out there hunting. Like I'm still out there to, get out in nature and have these adventures.
Yeah.
Um, and the thoughts that I have on a new product or how to improve something, like those will just happen, but that's not at all why I'm out there at all.
Absolutely. That makes sense. I love it. Well, what's on the horizon? What type of hunts you got going on this year and what type of products, if we can even tease? What type of things are on the horizon for Wiser Precision?
Yeah, so for Wiser Precision, if you're familiar with the Idaho draw system, and this is like kind of going back to what I just said, where the out of state and the new state, new place thing, such an adventure aspect. Like, I want to get somewhere else and hunt elk, but this year I'm trying to get my uncle an elk. Like, he's never killed a bull before, so gosh, this year we're killing him a bull. So we're going back to Idaho where I've been before, and I feel like we've got a pretty good plan, and we're going to get him a bull. So I don't have a tag myself. It's an over-the-counter state, but with what they changed in the last couple of years, there's this lobby system. So before they release tags for sale, if you're buying online, you get placed in an online lobby, and you can log in like 30 minutes or an hour prior. I think it's 30 minutes, and then everybody in that lobby gets assigned a random number. So it's sort of turned their over-the-counter um, tag system into a draw system with that lobby and the random assigned numbers. So, anyways, I got assigned like almost 19,000th in line,
Oh,
and by the time that my turn came up, there was like the unit that we were going to was not at all available, and there was almost no units available. So my uncle got a tag though, so I'm going to Idaho this year to help him kill a bull, and maybe I'll get a return tag this summer. We'll see, but largely just very excited to help my uncle get a bull. Um, yeah, the last year was such a wild, crazy year for elk. Um, got another bull, and I had 5 elk pack outs last year, and he got a cow here in Washington, a local cow, and that was pack out number 5, and that was so cool. Like I've never hunted with him before, and I honestly had no clue that he was even out hunting at all. I just got a call from him. He's like, Shane, I need you. It's like, yeah, what's up? He's like, I need your help. I've got an elk down. You got an elk down? What are you talking about? Yeah, she's in the river. She's what? She's in the river? Yeah, she died in the river. We need a boat. Like, oh my gosh, okay. Well, we're out in the river. So we put together this plan, and I ended up like, it was awesome. Like, I'm so glad that I took the day off to help him because it was just like such a crazy cool experience. My dad's a big fisherman, so he's got a couple of jet boats. So I snagged his smallest jet boat and his four-wheeler, and we got permission from a farmer to access the river bar down one of his farm trails. So I ended up like backing this jet boat with the four-wheeler down to the river bar and launched it, and we ran a mile of river and ended up finding the cow hung up on a log jam, and
wow.
got her got her drug up, close to the shore, and ended up getting her guts out there on the river, and somehow between the two of us got her in the boat, without quartering her, just missing her guts. Um, and Yeah, he's like mid-60s and just went through chemo, so not at his strongest. So it
That's
was largely my effort, but we managed to get her in the boat, and then ran the mile of river back up to where the four wheeler was, and ended up winching the four wheeler out of the river, and like it was just such a crazy cool adventure that like non-typical from any of the other hunts that I'm on, where I'm like I'm packing in like 3 to 5 miles to go kill something or further, and then I'm putting it on my back and packing out like going in a river after an elk. This is kind of cool.
yes, yes, dude. That is such an awesome story. That is that's epic. So he shot it and then it ran into the river and
Yep.
died.
Yeah. So yep. So they had, I think they were, if I'm remembering the story correctly from how he had told it, because again, I wasn't there when he shot her. Um, but I think that her and the herd that she was with were about 200 yards his side of the river. And then he ended up shooting her. And then the whole herd ran across the river and she didn't make it all the way across. And then ended up doggy paddling like 3/4 of a mile down the river from where he shot her. And then she hung up in a log jam. And then he put another one, ended up in her neck with muzzle loader. And then she was done. Um,
Dude, that's gnarly.
yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and she was a big cow too. We got her to the butcher, and um, so when the butcher put her on his scale on her hook on his hooks, he chopped off the legs from the knees down, and then took her head off, and then she was still 460 pounds, so
Wow.
missing lower legs, heads, guts. So a pretty healthy cow.
Yeah, dude, awesome. I love that. I love it. All right, so teaser, any products that that listeners might want to keep their eye out for 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, so we've got a huge backlog of products. Like I said, like I always just think of like how I can improve something. So there's a large backlog of products that I need to get to. Um, that I'll say we've got two prototypes right now. One is for the hunting industry, and the other's for the PRS industry. And I'll just leave it at that.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Okay, so all you listeners who are in the state of Washington, Shane is up in Everson, just east of Linden. It's always fun to highlight these local people and to hit home with local creators and hunters and all that. So Shane, do you shoot long range competitively?
Every that's like I go and shoot a match every couple of years, and that's as often as I shoot. It's something that I'd like to do more, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm so weird that way. Like I love riding my bike too, and I ride my bike hardly ever.
Are you talking about bicycle or dirt bike?
Both.
Yeah, all right. I love it. I love it. Well, Shane, how can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they get connected with you and your products?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram and Facebook, and I would say I like personally, I just keep closer tabs on Instagram, Wiser Precision. Same deal with Facebook. Or if you want to reach out, you can do that at support@wiserprecision.com. And then we also have a contact form on our website as well.
Sweet. I love it. Sorry, listeners. Man, got all choked up right there from Shane's story. Everybody, guys, go support Shane, support Wiser Precision. Go take a look at what he's created, get to know him, get involved in your community, build connections. You never know what's going to happen in this world. Shane, thank you so much for coming on, man, and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Everyone, go to wiserprecision.com for all of the products from Shane and that he's putting out. Also, give him a follow on social media. Go give him a thumbs up. If you like this podcast, feel free to share it, like it, review it. As always, it is so nice to have all you guys listening. Be blessed, be of good cheer. Know that life is happening for you, not to you. We're not the result of the circumstances in our lives, everybody. You get to create your own existence. Freedom on, and as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.